So they don't get much bigger and more interesting than the guest we have sitting across from us right now. You know him maybe from the NCAA, from West Virginia, from a lot of different places. Now the CEO of the XFL, Oliver Luck, is with us. How are you? Let's get him turned up here. Make sure let's get these microphones.
There we go.
That's much better.
Now we're talking. I'm doing great. Thanks very much.
Now we're cooking with gas.
Appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate you being here. And we were joking during the break that you're a good man to be speaking with for a lot of different reasons, because in Charlotte right now there's a lot of anxiety and hand-wringing over Cam Newton's shoulder, and you've got a son who went through a lot of that.
Yes, I do, and he had a labrum issue, of course, on his throwing shoulder, missed all of this past season, the 17 season. And that's a challenge, right? I mean, for a quarterback, for a pitcher, anybody who's a thrower in a sport, really you rely on your shoulders so much. As Andrew says, he looked into the abyss because at one point he really didn't know if he was going to be able to play. And that's hard, right? Particularly when it's your son.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's what I was going to ask. I mean, beyond the medical, beyond the quarterback, beyond the being able to throw, how hard was it for you as a dad watching that happen, not knowing if my kid's going to be all right?
Yeah, well, every parent, right, wants the best for his or her child, and that's no different whether they're playing Pop Warner football or playing in the National Football League or doing anything else. So it was a challenge because, it's going through a rehab like that is as much mental as it is physical. So, and it's boring. It's repetitive. I mean, doing rehab is just awful, and, but, he went through it. I give him a lot of credit, had a very, rigorous schedule, stuck to that schedule, and ultimately it's worked out well. And I hope, for Cam's sake, that he has that same experience.
Yeah, no, he had a heck of a year. Andrew had a heck of a year. Let me dive in real quick because I want to give you as much time as possible to talk about this. Why will the XFL succeed this time around?
So I think there's a couple things that are certainly different from 2001. So there won't be any real familiarity with that. That was a bad league with bad football, simply put.
That's
right?
Pretty honest, yeah.
And when I first was interviewed by Vince McMahon, of course, who's funding the league, when I was first interviewing with him, I said to him, "Hey Vince, why is this going to be any different?" He said, "Well, I want to do it right this time. I want to hire football people. I want to give you all time. Right? We're not launching until 2020. Time to build it right, hire the right coaches, and get the right broadcast partners, do all those things that you have to do." So we have time. I think we're well funded. I'm sure read in the papers, or it's been Darren. You've probably written about it. Vince has committed $500 million to this venture, which is a lot of money. And I think we are putting together a good, solid group of people to build this league. I've hired Doug Whaley, former GM of the Buffalo Bills. He's my senior VP of football. We're in great markets, really NFL markets, including former NFL markets. St. Louis will be in great stadiums. We're going to have really good partners, whether it's on the commercial side, broadcast, or cable. I think this time around we can really do this. Now, having said that, spring leagues are tough, right? The graveyard is littered with the headstones of former spring leagues. But because of the capital that Vince has, and because of what I would like to think is sort of the disciplined decision making, right? I think we've got a shot. So consider the USFL. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine. Consider the USFL. Had they stayed in the spring and built their brand and improved their football, which was pretty good. There's some great players playing in that league. That would be, if it were around today, that would be a very valuable sports property. And so I think you need the discipline not to do stupid things. I worked at the league for 10 years as an executive, and Lamar Hunt was very engaged with NFL Europe, which I was running. And Lamar used to say to me, "Oliver, you have to know who you are, but more importantly, you have to know who you're not." So don't do stupid things. Don't do things that aren't really identifiable with what you have in your core competencies. And that's up to us to have that disciplined decision making.
Oliver, I think when people think XFL in the first run, they think about stuff like the scrum instead of the kickoff, those almost carnival aspects. I think one of the things you're doing that has the potential to be a game changer, not just for the XFL but for the NFL at large, is you mentioned the XFL would be willing to take guys who hadn't played their 3 years of college football. How aggressively do you think the XFL is going to pursue that kind of player? Is that a special case situation? Or when a guy like Trevor Lawrence blows up college football as a freshman, do you try to reel in the big fish and change the game by bringing in that level of player?
Well, it's a great question. Obviously, you guys know we're not subject to, the XFL is not subject to the NFL's eligibility rules, which 3 years out of high school, that's baked into the NFL collective bargaining agreement. We don't have a union, may have a union someday, who knows. But yes, we are able, and we will take players who are not 3 years out of high school. In fact, we could take a high school player if there's somebody who's physically capable of playing. I doubt we would.
Right.
But every now and then you see a Herschel Walker or a Leonard Fournette or a Adrian Peterson, or go on and on. Right? There's guys that probably could play.
Yeah.
So how aggressive we'll be, don't know yet, to be very honest with you. So I'm a big believer in college football and the benefits that accrue to a guy like Trevor Lawrence, playing in front of 60 or 70,000 people, prepares oneself very well for the National Football League. But I also know there are guys that flunk out of school and aren't academically eligible that want to have a home and want to continue to play football and make some money. There are folks who maybe transfer and don't want to sit out a year.
Right.
So there are some opportunities that we're going to have, and I think we're just going to sort of watch closely and how it plays out, over the course of the next 6, 7, 8 months.
And his is the name we're going to attach to it, but make it a hypothetical. How would you pitch the XFL to a star freshman quarterback in NCAA football to say, hey, it's not going to be NFL money, but you're not going to make NFL money for 2 years. We can put you in a pro situation where you're only doing football. How do you pitch it to that kid?
Well, that's precisely part of it is, you're not subject to the 20-hour practice rule or the 8-hour in the off-season rule, right? You can spend a lot of time with quality, really good coaches, right? Quality coaches that we're going to have. You can learn the game as well as you can learn it, I think, in any other, on any other platform, so to speak. And you can make some money. Right, so obviously college football is a juggernaut. It's one of the more, one of the most important institutions, I think, in our sporting landscape in this country. But I think there's an argument to be made for a limited number of young men who may not be suited ideally for college, or JUCO kids. There's some good players, as you guys know, coming out of some of the junior colleges.
And you sort of capped it before. You said this is going to be a $250,000, $300,000 a year range for a season for the premier players at the top of the scale.
Correct.
Well, so let me ask you this, because I'm fascinated by this whole thing. I was reading an article in the Sports Business Journal about this emergence of several leagues that are trying to take a big bite out of the football pie.
Right.
They're not all of those are the same, right? I mean, you talked about the funding, $500 million that Vince has pumped into this thing. I've had several conversations with Tiki Barber about the AAF and what's being done there. How big, I guess, in your estimation or the league's estimation, how big a market or an appetite is there for football that Vince is willing to sink $500 million into this endeavor? Because is it just about spring football, or does he envision this down the road challenging the NFL?
Well, I don't think anybody can challenge the National Football League. It's a great league. I love it. I was proud to have been a player. I'm proud my son can play in the league. I enjoy the league every Sunday like, hundreds of millions of people around the world. So I don't think anybody's going to challenge the National Football League. But I believe a spring league, well run, well funded, well executed, can create value, quite honestly. Because, listen, there are a lot of people. We estimate about 40 million self-identified, passionate, hardcore football fans. Those are the 40 million that come Sunday afternoon are going to be sad because there's no more football for the next February, March, April, May, June, July, into the late summer and the fall. So I think you can build a business around that. If you think about it, why do we play football in the fall?
Because it's always been played in the fall.
It's a historical accident.
Yeah.
Think about it. When Rutgers and Princeton teed it up back in 1869, they happened to do that in November.
Right.
What if they had done that in April or May?
That's a good point. Right? I was going to say they couldn't have figured out shoulder pads were hot at that point. It couldn't have been
so in a sense, it's a historical accident. And football, as we all know, and one of the reasons we love it, it's a game that you can't really have a long season like soccer or basketball or baseball, right? So I really do believe that there are enough people in this country, certainly, and even those around the world that have developed an interest in the game, to build a standalone, sustainable league. Now, it'll take some time, And that's where Vince's money comes into play, right? So we have the capital certainly to go into year 2 and year 3 and year 4. We're going to announce probably within a week some awesome broadcast partners that'll give us great exposure, both on the terrestrial side as well as the cable side. So we have a shot, but in large part because people just love football, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. So I know before we let you go, because I know you've got a bunch of these you have to do. You talked about quality of play, right? You talked about. I'm curious. Do you think that this league? Actually, I'll back up. Are guys in Trevor Lawrence's position, right, at Clemson right now, 2 years until he can come out? Is it good for them to have, other options? Is there still value in college football? I guess is what I'm trying to say here. I mean, is there still value in the college game?
There's a ton of value in the college game.
Because everybody's talking about money and guys getting paid, but I mean, you know what it's like to play big-time college football. Is there still value in the college game?
There's absolutely value in playing in front of 75,000 rabid fans, whether they're your own or somebody else's, right? That prepares you for the National Football League, right? Great competition, whether you're playing in the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12, whatever it is, right? So there's still a huge value in that, and there's a lot of value in an education. I mean, I spent years working in both as an AD and of course at the NCAA, but there are a number of young men for whom the education doesn't matter, right? They may be in financial circumstances where they have to earn some money. They may not want to play a third year at linebacker and sustain 75 more tackles or hits or whatever, right? So I think for a select few, I think it's good to have this optionality. It's very much like what's happening in college basketball.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And real quick, I mean, one of Charlotte's favorites is Rod Smart. He Hate Me was a part of the Panthers Super Bowl team a while back. Will this XFL still have that component of character and personality about it, where a He Hate Me across the back of the jersey might be something you look at?
Yeah, so what I'll say is this. We want to have character and personality, but we also don't want to be gimmicky, right? Yeah. The American public doesn't like, it's a fine line, right? The American public doesn't like gimmicks, particularly when it comes to football, because football is very important to a hell of a lot of people in this country, right? And we'll see that on Sunday. So we want to do all those things without being gimmicky or cheesy.
What was meeting Vince McMahon like for the first time?
Vince is awesome. I mean, I've always admired him, even though I don't watch wrestling. But I've admired him because he's a great entrepreneur.
Yes.
Sort of the American dream, right? To take a relatively small regional wrestling business and turning it into WWE, a publicly traded, $1 billion a year company. It's remarkable. He loves football. He doesn't know the game that well. I think he played in high school. It's about it, right? But he just loves the game and sort of what it means, and where it fits into the American fabric. He's a sportsman at heart.
That's cool. He's an ECU Pirate as well.
That's right. He's a Pirate.
He's a Pirate.
He's a
Oliver,
Pirate.
we could do this all day. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate the insight and the time. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Darren.
There you go.
Good to be with y'all.
CEO of the XFL joining us here on Radio Row, and that was a fun conversation.